Settleman Boxing, like, subscribe, comment. Today we're looking at Shakur Stevenson versus Frank the Ghost Martin. We're looking at strengths and weaknesses of both guys, as well as keys to victory. This is one of the fights we've been asking for. It's like Captain America versus Wolverine. We're gonna put the spotlight on it. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Settleman Boxing. Blessings in the name of Jesus. So today we're looking at Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin. This is one of the fights we've been waiting for. This has been a great year for boxing. This is not a $100 million fight, but it's definitely a fight that we've been waiting for. Both guys are in the top 10. Both are undefeated in the lightweight division, which has been stacked for some time. So let's just get right into it. Let's look at both guys. Shakur Stevenson first. Let's look at him. Shakur, he's a complete fighter, man. Shakur does everything well. He has a great jab. He has great footwork. I think one of the most elite facets of his skill set is his distance control. He knows exactly where to be to hit you, and he knows exactly where not to be so that he himself doesn't get hit. Shakur just has a great IQ. We know he has great defense, but I don't think he gets credit for his offense. And Shakur, he does it with his IQ. Shakur will, you can tell that he has like a great understanding of the ebbs and flows of boxing. Boxing has a expand, contract dynamic to it. So guys don't just go out there and start throwing, okay? And then whichever robot breaks first falls. No, there's an exchange. And most times when guys are defending, attack, after the attack is over, then they expand in order to get their get back. Shakur, he can identify when fighters are resetting. He can identify when they're opening up. So he exploits that. For example, Shakur will throw 2 or 3 shots. Each, right? And once the opponent covers up, moves their head, or gets hit, Shakur, his timing is so well, he anticipates them opening up to get their get back, and then he meets them before they can pull the trigger. He meets them with 3 or 4 shots. So a lot of times his rhythm sounds like each, right? He just has a great boxing IQ. Great fighter, good pedigree. You know, he's a silver medalist. He's a multiple division world champion. So you definitely have to give Shakur the edge in this fight. When you look at his experience and his pedigree, it's like he went to boxing's Harvard or Princeton. He went to boxing's Ivy League school. That is the stock that he's been cut from. He is a top tier lightweight as far as skills are concerned. Probably not the best when it comes to experience and accomplishment, but skill for skill, Shakur is up there with the best of them. Now, Frank Martin. Frank Martin, he's a great fighter as well. Frank Martin is a hard worker, man. He's a blue-collar guy. He has a good jab. He has a great fundamental style. He sets up all his shots with his jab. He has great footwork. He has good speed. He has good power. He does have good ring IQ as well. He does set traps for guys, and he has that signature pull left hand. He has a signature pull counter with his left hand, and he does great work. He's not as experienced as Shakur. If Shakur went to Harvard, Frank Martin went to the community college. Both graduated summa cum laude. Both are at the top of their class. But when it comes to accomplishments, when it comes to pedigree, you have to give it to Shakur. But Frank Martin, I love Frank Martin's work. He works very hard. His footwork is very, very, very precise. He is very defensively responsible. And if it gets chippy in there, Frank Martin, he'll rough you up. If it starts to turn into a fight, a dog fight, Frank Martin will rough you up. He can get rugged. You can tell that Derek James works on polishing his style a lot. But when it comes down to it in there, you can tell Frank Martin just likes to fight. And he doesn't mind getting rugged in there. So let's look at both guys. Those are basically the strengths of both guys. Let's look at the weaknesses. So let's look at Shakur. Does Shakur have any weaknesses? Not much. Shakur does not have a lot of weaknesses. But in watching him, I have identified 2 weaknesses that I can talk about. One of which is Shakur. If you're in there with Shakur and he decides to turn it into a dog fight, and it's competitive, like there's danger coming back to him, Shakur can get in the groove where he's trying to knock you out with one shot. Okay, where he's trying to land one big shot to end it all. Like he has a point to prove. I don't think he can do that with Frank Martin. He's gonna have to put his shots together to beat Frank Martin. You saw that in the Robson-Conceição fight. He won that fight clearly, but he took a lot of shots that he should not have taken. He took a lot of right hands, especially looping right hands. If you look at Shakur's face after that fight, it was a bit marked up, and it was because of the kind of fight he fought, you know, and he was trying to knock Robson-Conceição out, but he was trying to do it with one punch, okay? And if in that fight, that can be exploited as a weakness against somebody like Frank Martin. Frank Martin is a lot faster, and you know, he's a lot sharper with his shots. When I say that, you look at a lot of Cuban boxers, and not even just Cuban boxers, but you look at some boxers, and I don't know if it's how they're taught, but they slap with their shots a lot. For example, your Dennis Ugas, he slaps with his shots a lot. Frank Martin don't slap with no shots. He's hitting you on the button, and he's quite accurate, and it can happen at any point in the fight, whether he's down, regardless. It can happen at any point in the fight. So I would say one of Shakur's weaknesses that he would have to tighten up: don't get in a position where you're throwing one shot at a time. As far as other weaknesses that Shakur has, not much to talk about. And the thing about it is, with a fighter as good as Shakur, where they don't display much weaknesses, you have to do your best to turn their strengths into a weakness. Okay, that's what you have to do with great fighters. You have to turn their strengths into a weakness. What do I mean by that? If you remember the Floyd Mayweather fight versus Marcos Maidana 2, the second fight. Remember Floyd, from the first fight, Floyd was piecing him up with the pull counter, the pull right hand that he does. Beautiful work, right? But in the second fight, Marcos Maidana anticipated that pull counter, and he followed up with a right hand after Floyd tried to do it, and he caught Floyd Mayweather with a picture-perfect straight right hand at the end of one of those rounds. It was one of the early rounds. That's the punch they say knocked out one of Floyd's teeth. I don't think that's true. That's what they say. But the point I'm making is, the pull counter is one of Floyd's signature moves. It's one of his strengths. But in order to beat a great fighter, you have to exploit their strengths and turn them into weaknesses. So that's what Frank is going to have to do to beat Shakur. And I'll talk about that in a minute when it comes to keys to victory. When you look at Frank Martin, Frank Martin, he's a great fighter as well. He is a complete fighter also. But Frank Martin, if there's any weakness he has a disgusting, nasty weakness of jabbing and standing right in front of the guy and waiting, jabbing and waiting. Or he'll get in a position where he's standing in front of a guy waiting for them to make a move, but he's not doing anything. He's not using his lead hand, flickering it, moving it, creating punch traffic to keep his opponent off guard. You can't do that against Shakur Stevenson. He's going to piece you up all night. Another weakness that Frank has, these are the two weaknesses I see Frank has. Frank, when his opponent, he has a tendency, when his opponent throws shots at him, he'll defend the shots well, but he'll just stand there as if, look at that, you didn't hit me. Bro, you got to be active. If Shakur throws 3 shots and you miss them or block them, you need to be throwing something back at Shakur to keep him guessing, to keep him thinking. Also, Shakur, he's very good at beating you up when you're stationary. So Frank, he has a way of being a bit too stationary sometimes. Too stationary, not moving. That would be a weakness against Shakur. So what do both guys need to do to win? Shakur needs to be Shakur, man. Shakur needs to be Shakur. I do give him the edge in this fight because he makes less mistakes. The only thing I would say, Shakur needs not get in a firefight with Frank. Frank has the bigger punch. Frank could beat you up. Frank is a brute in there. He's a little guy, but Frank is a brute. And if Shakur lets him get certain shots off, he could hurt Shakur. What do I mean by that? You know, guys are accustomed to getting away from punches that are thrown in a traditional sense. Jab, right hand, left hook, right? But Frank Martin, one of his strengths is he's very good with his offense. He has a mean right hook. That right hook can go to the body and then come right upstairs. Or the right hand can be an uppercut to the body and turn into a right hook upstairs. He also doubles the right hook upstairs, right? Even if he's been outboxed, he can explode into offense and catch you. We saw how he busted up his previous opponent's eye, an undefeated guy now. He busted up his eye, probably broke his orbital bone. So Shakur, he can't be looking for one shot and turn it into a firefight with Frank, because that's where Frank would have the strengths. Otherwise, just maintain distance, throw counter shots, and he'll have the edge in that regard. Now, Frank Martin, he's not as polished as Shakur. Shakur is like Captain America. You know, he's a master of various styles. You look at Shakur's style, he is a master of what he does. Frank Martin, you look at Frank has good skills, but he's like the Wolverine. He's that brute. He's that, he does have good skills, but he's that brute. His style is not as polished. He has good skills. I'm not downplaying Frank Martin, but it's not as polished, but he does have more power. If I was Frank, I would use that reality to my advantage. He has a good, strong jab, so I would use the jab to come in against Shakur, but don't go straight in. Always jab, moving forward, jabbing at a quarter step at an angle. Jab moving forward, but you're moving forward at an angle. Double the jab, triple the jab. Don't let Shakur counter you off of throwing one shot at a time. He needs to double and triple the jab. Another thing Frank needs to do is when he throws that jab out there, he needs to turn it into a shield right after to make sure that he's avoiding Shakur's counter. So it would look something like this. Jab, boom. or jab, take his head off the line. Use the lead hand not just to get in, but to protect yourself. Let it be your first line of defense, like a Roman shield, right? What I would do as Frank Martin to beat Shakur, because he has the most adjustments to make. What I would do as Frank Martin to do damage to Shakur. Shakur has a way, it's not necessarily a weakness, it's a strength. He will throw shots at the middle distance, bap, bap, right? And to get away from the counter fire, he pulls straight back. But he does it so fast that the hooks and the straight shots that are fired back at that moment fall short. His reflexes are great, but Frank Martin can exploit that pullback, that quick pullback by Shakur, by not throwing just one shot to counter. If Shakur throws a combination and he goes to counter and Shakur pulls back from the initial counter punch from Frank Martin needs to step in with 2 or 3 shots. Not wild shots, straight shots. So Shakur throws a combination, bap, 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 and then he pulls to get away from the straight left hand. You jab, jab, straight left hand, jab, jab. End every combination with the jab. Make Shakur afraid of opening up, because what that'll do is that will kind of guide Shakur into throwing less punches. And if you can get Shakur to throw a few shots at a time, then you can change the dynamic of the fight into less of a tit for tat and change it into a fight where Frank is the aggressor chasing him down. I think he has the best chance. Have a good defense, have a good jab defense, good defense. Throw your shots from your shoulders, bring them right back. Feint a lot. He's going to have to feint Shakur like crazy to stop those counter punches, but he can win. I'm rooting for Frank Martin in this fight, but you have to give the edge to Shakur. Shakur is one of the best at what he does. I would say it's about, probably like a 60-40 fight for Shakur, but I'm rooting for Frank Martin because he can explode into offense and end up hurting Shakur. He needs to go to the body. He needs to throw a lot of straight shots, and he needs to control the space. Don't let Shakur go out there and make a clown out of you, putting his hand on facing you, posting his hand on your forehead and stuff like that. Don't let him do you like Oscar Valdez, man. Frank, get in there and show why you're different, okay? So the question is, what are the odds of Wolverine beating Captain America? I don't know, but that's the Celloman Boxing Spotlight on the matter. I can't wait till they decide the exact date. It's supposed to be either, I think, November 16th or something like that, or December 9th. I just hope it happens, because that is going to be a feast, a treat for us boxing fans, all right? Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin. Let me know how you think it goes down in the comments. Let me know who you think is going to win. Don't just tell me who you think is going to win. Tell me how. Break it down. That's the Celloman Boxing Spotlight on the matter. Blessing.